Something woke me at 3 a.m. My room was dark, with just the faintest slither of moonlight shining in through the curtains. It was quiet too. I could hear a soft rain drumming against the window and the sound of my own heartbeat. Nothing else. I was about to turn over and settle back down on my pillow when I saw the figure in my doorway. Someone standing in the shadows. If I hadn't immediately recognized who it was, I think I might have screamed. Jesus, Danny, it's the middle of the damn night. You scared the hell out of me. Danny's my little brother. Only 10, but he's pretty cool for his age. A good kid. The two of us have always got on well. And last night, he'd helped me out by agreeing not to tell our parents I'd had some friends over for drinks. They're away for their anniversary at the moment. Left me in charge for the night. And when I asked Danny to hang out in his room so I could get people round for a drunken board game session, he'd said okay. Which is why, even though I was annoyed to find him in my room at this time, I didn't get angry. "What's up, mate?" I asked him now. "How come you're out of bed?" As I spoke, two possibilities were already in my mind. The first was that Danny had overheard me and my friends drinking downstairs. It had gotten a little loud. There were only 8 of us, but Charlie Jacobs managed to bring a litre of vodka he'd swiped from his dad's cabinet. The whole evening had very quickly descended. It was meant to be just board games and casual drinks. People brought games like Monopoly over to play, and Jenga, and Hayley Matthews even brought round her sister's damn Ouija board. But we barely touched them in the end. Just stuck with the vodka and the drinking games. So, option 1 was that Danny had heard us making some dumb joke or talking about something he didn't understand, and now he wanted to ask me about it. That wouldn't have been too out of character. The kid is curious, and he asks a lot of questions. I used to share a room with him, and I know his habit of lying awake and turning stuff over when he can't sleep. The other option was that I'd caught him sneaking into my room to prank me. This seems less likely, but still possible. Over the past year, Danny and I have been playing a game. It involves taking turns to hide notes in each other's bedrooms. Sounds dumb, but we enjoy it. The note can be anything. A warning in soap on the mirror, a post-it tacked to the wardrobe. It has to be hidden during the night, so the other person only finds it when they wake up. Something scary or some stupid joke. Anything. And the most popular version of this game, the holy grail if you like, is getting a note under the other person's pillow. That one requires serious stealth. Sat up against my pillow now, my head pounding from vodka, I wondered if this was what Danny had been going for, if maybe I'd caught him in the act. But so far, he still hadn't said anything. He was just standing in the doorway, staring in my direction, the shadows hiding his face. "Danny, you gonna talk to me or you just gonna stand there and watch me sleep?" "Mikey." Danny's voice was soft. Although the house was silent, I could hardly hear him. "Mikey." That was when I felt the first hint of fear. I didn't know what was making me feel it at the time. Maybe just something in Danny's voice. "What is it, mate?" "Mikey. Cold. Feel. Hands." What the hell? I stared at the kid's shadow, unsure I'd heard him correctly. "What did you say, Danny?" "Mikey. Cold. I'm..." What the hell are you on about? Is that meant to be a bad Yoda impression or something? The kid seemed to be talking backwards, swapping his sentences round the other way. Was he sleepwalking? Playing a joke on me? My mind reeled through different possibilities, none of which made much sense. I never known Danny to sleepwalk, for one, and he simply wasn't a good enough actor to pull a joke like this off without cracking up. No, something else was going on. Maybe the kid was ill and feeling delirious? Me. Inside. Something. There's. Danny's voice had a hollow quality to it, like every word was an effort to get out. I played back what he just said, reversing the word order, and I felt fear creeping along my back like damp rising up a wall. What's going on, mate? What happened? Danny's silhouette twitched. He'd been standing completely still before, and the movement was sudden, unmistakable. When he spoke next, his voice sounded different. Still not 100% normal, but better, and he was suddenly talking the right way round again. Sorry for waking you up. I guess I'm just not feeling well. Before I had the chance to reply, Danny twitched again. He twitched and took a step forward, out of the doorway. As his face became visible in the moonlight, I felt a shiver run up my back. Danny was crying. Or at least, he'd been crying recently. His eyes were red, and his cheeks glistened with tears. He opened his mouth, then closed it, opened it again. When he next spoke, he'd reverted back to the same stilted, backward speech he was using before. The sound of it put my teeth on edge. Game, board, black, that, played, and downstairs, snuck, I. This one took me longer for me to play back, and even when I had, it took me a few moments to understand what Danny meant. I got there eventually, and when I finally did, I actually felt a tiny bit better. The only black board game downstairs was Haley's sister's Ouija board. She must have forgotten to take it with her when she left. In my mind, I could already see what had to have happened. Danny had woken in the night and gone downstairs, maybe to see what we were up to, maybe just to check if I was still awake. But by then everyone had gone, and I was in bed, so maybe Danny was about to head back upstairs too, only before he spotted the Ouija board. Its box is sort of eye-catching. If Danny noticed it, it made sense that he might have gone over for a closer look. From there, the rest was pretty obvious. The kid must have spooked himself. The game is full of references to spirits and other planes of reality, all that nonsense. He'd probably just read something that freaked him out, and now he was having nightmares. Which all makes sense. But there was still one big question. Why the hell was the kid talking backwards? It's nothing, I told myself. He's probably just half asleep and a little delirious, that's all. The explanation didn't really make sense, and a part of me knew it. But I ignored that part. I was tired, and my head ached. I wanted to go back to sleep. So I pushed the nagging doubts to one side, and I beckoned Danny over. Did what any good brother would do. I pulled back the covers and shuffled to one side, then patted the space next to me. Don't worry, mate, I said. You've been having bad dreams, I reckon. You need to sleep it off. Danny didn't say anything. Just padded over to the bed, lay down next to me. Soon, the only sound I could hear in the room was his breathing. I'd almost drifted off when he said something that half stirred me. Fading myself, feel, can, help, need, I was half asleep by then though, and his words seemed to be coming from a long way away. I awoke early this morning. The moonlight from the night before had been replaced by bright sunshine. It shone through the curtains and made me squint as I opened my eyes. Memories from the previous night flooded back to me. I turned over, planning to check on Danny, but his side of the bed was empty. I raised myself up on one elbow, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and almost screamed. Danny was standing in the doorway, completely still, in last night's pajamas, his face an unreadable mask as he stared at me. Despite the daylight streaming in through the curtains, I felt the same fear I'd felt before, but it disappeared when Danny smiled at me. "Morning," he said. "I'm sorry I woke you up last night. I must have been having some bad dreams." He was speaking normally again. Thank God. Danny was speaking the right way around. As I squinted over at him, I felt relief wash over me. "That's okay, mate. How are you feeling now?" "Much better, thank you." "You really freaked me out for a moment there, talking weird and stuff. I thought I might have to call Mum and Dad. Can you imagine how mad they'd have been if I had to cut their anniversary short?" I grinned, expecting Danny to grin back. But he didn't. He just kept staring at me with the same smile fixed on his face. "Well, I'm much better now," he said after a moment. "I'm actually going to go and get some toast. Would you like some?" I frowned for a moment, unsure I'd heard him correctly. Danny has never offered to make me breakfast before. Not once. But I guessed at the time that maybe he just felt bad about waking me up, that it was his way of saying sorry. "Okay, sure, toast sounds great. Thanks, buddy." "You're welcome, Mike." With that, he turned and left. I lay there in bed, the frown back on my face. It took me a moment to realize what it was that felt off. And then I played back the last thing Danny said to me. "You're welcome, Mike." Mike. The kid never calls me Mike. It's always Mikey. I pushed myself into a sitting position, and as I did, I heard something scrunch beneath my pillow. I reached a hand under it and pulled out a piece of paper. A note. It only took me a second to recognize Danny's scrawled handwriting, and when I read what he'd written, I felt myself grow cold. It was a short note, just a couple of lines, but it was written backwards, in the same way that Danny had been speaking last night. Out, me, let, won't, he, smaller, getting, keeps, it, head, my, in, room, in, trapped, I'm trapped in a room in my head. It keeps getting smaller. He won't let me out. As soon as I read the note, I stuffed it back under the pillow. Tried to act as normal as I could, but inside, I felt ill. Danny brought me breakfast a short while later. He smiled as he put it on my bedside table. I noticed that he didn't blink once while he was setting down the plate, but I smiled right back. And now, I'm waiting. Now I'm counting down the hours until my parents get home, watching the clock. Danny has been in his room for most of the day, keeping to himself. A couple of times I've heard noises coming from it. Strange sounds I can't place. Dull thumps, like furniture being knocked over. Low whispers, as if he's in there, talking to himself. I've stayed hidden in my own room. I know I should go and check on him. I know I should. He's my little brother after all. But I keep thinking of his blank face and the note he left under my pillow. And I just can't bring myself to. I was alone at my favourite fishing spot that resides less than half a mile away from the general public picnic area. I arrived early in the afternoon, readied my fishing pole, and began to fish. The early afternoon had a cool, gentle breeze. The frogs sang to one another, the crickets created a nice little symphony, and the clicking of my fishing reel was carried away by the rushing water of Otter Creek. Hours went by, and I managed to catch a few fish here and there. I popped open some cold Stellas and smoked my camels as the day went by. About 5 or 6 hours into my fishing, the fish were no longer biting. I didn't care. I was there just to get away from the city and take away some stress off my shoulders. I needed it since my job had kicked my ass that week. I was in no rush to leave. I had plenty of beers in my cooler and plenty of cigarettes to smoke. I even ate sunflower seeds and beef jerky. Both go well with beer. The sun started to settle, and I was feeling pretty toasty by that time. The wind picked up a little, and the leaves on the trees rustled as the branches swayed back and forth. I had already put down my fishing pole since I wasn't having any luck, and drank a couple more beers. I was just relaxing. It was nice and peaceful, until a loud splash occurred about 50 yards down the creek. I jumped at the sound, spilling my beer on me. I looked down the direction of the splash, but saw nothing. Must have been a fish, I thought. It was hard to see since the sun was setting, so everything looked like silhouettes. I stared a little longer down the creek, waiting to see if anything would move. Nothing. Just the trees moving side to side. I shifted my attention back to my beer, chugged the rest of it, and started to gather my things. I stood up, stretched my arms out, and caught something in the corner of my eye move. I quickly looked back down the creek where I had heard the splash, and saw a dark figure standing, slouching in the middle of the creek. I couldn't make out what it was, and I was squinting hard to focus on the figure. I waited a couple of minutes to see if it would move, but it just kept standing in the same spot, doing nothing. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me since I did have one too many beers. I heard another splash, but this time it was up the creek, the direction I needed to go. I shifted my attention up the creek and witnessed a deer walking across the water. I watched the deer disappear into the woods, and I looked back down the creek, and the slouchy figure had vanished. Stupid deer, that's all. Just a dumb deer, I said to myself. I bent down to pick up my things, and I began to hear rocks clacking in the distance. It got louder and louder, closer and closer. It surrounded me, and it was everywhere. Tree branches were being snapped in all directions. The clacking of rocks got louder and then completely stopped. All I could hear was the sound of the rushing water, frogs, the leaves of the trees, and the crickets. My eyes shifted from side to side, trying to catch a glimpse of a person, but it was way too dark to see anything. I pulled out my flashlight from the side pocket of my cooler, shined it all around me. If I thought I saw something or someone, I would hold the light until my mind would learn that it was just a bush or a tree trunk. I was determined to catch whatever the hell it was making all that noise. I should have left instead of staying around. I placed the flashlight under my arm, pulled out a cigarette, placed it in my mouth, flicked my Zippo lighter, lit the cigarette, and used my hand to block the wind from putting out the flame. Then I saw something through the orange glow of the flame. It was standing directly across the creek from where I was standing. I shined my flashlight frantically, revealing a slouchy woman. She was completely nude, but her skin was greyish and scaly. Her head was bent all the way, completely back, showing just the underside of her chin. Her arms hung to her sides, and her hands were long and bony. Her nails were razor sharp, and her whole body was covered in patches of dark hair. What the hell? What is that? What do you want? I asked politely. No response. I was too afraid to move the light anywhere else. I didn't know if there were more of those things. For all I know, I could have been surrounded by them, just waiting to eat me alive. But I had to get out of there fast. Look, I don't know what the hell is going on, but I'm going to get my stuff and leave. I'm going to go now, okay? I said to her, thinking that would make her go away. I slowly bent down to pick up my fishing pole and cooler, keeping the light on the scaly woman. I stood up and she made a twitchy move. I could hear her bones crack, and her skin made the sound of a brand new leather jacket when bending the arm. Then she slowly started to make her way towards me, but she was walking on the water. My eyes widened and my heart started to pound violently. I began to tremble in fear, and the light of my flashlight danced around. She slowly bent down on all fours, her head still bent backwards, and her back arched inward. What I saw next has messed me up. She started to bear crawl on the water towards me, but her body contorted in weird ways, like she didn't have any bones in her body. I was completely paralyzed with fear. The scaly woman stopped dead in the middle of the creek, and her head slowly started to rise forward, and I could hear every neck bone crack. Her mouth was wide open, just a black hole. Her eyes were completely white, and her scalp peered through her wet, stringy black hair. She let out an ear-piercing cry and jolted after me. I dropped my stuff and ran as fast as I could. The sandy bank made it a challenge, but I dug in hard and ran. I could hear the splashing behind me as she came after me. I could hear her bones crack and pop, and the stretching of her skin. She let out another ear-piercing scream, and so did I. My lungs burned as I fought to gasp for air. Goddamn cigarettes. My legs were giving out from underneath me. I fought to keep running. My stomach was in knots, and I wanted to throw up badly. The beer sloshed around in my stomach. Finally, I came to the path that led into the woods. The splashing had stopped. I hid behind a big oak tree and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The night fell silent. I couldn't hear the frogs or crickets anymore. Maybe it was because the throbbing in my veins deafened nature's voice. I took deep breaths, trying to calm my heart. Sweat dripped from every crevice of my body. My chest hurt and burned. My sides ached with every inhale due to the fact that I was out of shape. I then started to hear scratching on the other side of the tree. She was clawing the tree bark. My heart pounded once again. The branches of the oak tree shook right above me. She was climbing the damn tree. I slowly shined my flashlight upwards, and there she was, hanging upside down like a bat, staring down at me with her big white eyes and her mouth gaped. She began to climb down the tree like a spider. My survival instincts kicked in, and I took off once again. I ran through the dark woods, avoiding rocks, low-hanging branches, and outgrown roots the best I could. The last thing I wanted to do was trip while being chased by the horrendous monster. I managed to reach the end of the woods. Now it was time to cross the open field and get to my car. I could hear every single branch snap behind me as she made her way out of the dark woods. She was gaining on me. With every last weak muscle in my legs, I ran, giving it everything I had. I was now out in the open with nowhere to hide. The moon shined brightly on the open field, making me an easy target. I glanced back to see her gallop after me. Her back arched upward and her head stretched forward. The bones of her spine poked out from under her skin. I began to slow down. I'd reached my stamina limit. I was screwed. Goddamn cigarettes. My running turned into a jog, and I couldn't catch my breath. I wanted to give up. I wanted this to be over with immediately. I saw my car parked all by its lonesome in the gravel parking lot. With a very heavy exhale, I said to myself, just a few more feet. I fumbled for my keys in my shorts pocket. I hit the unlock button. I overheard the light lit in the inside of my car, telling me it was unlocked. I reached the driver's side door, quickly opened it, jumped in, and jammed the key into the ignition. Turned the key and slammed the gear shifter into drive. I stomped on the gas, and the front tires kicked up gravel, but they spun a few seconds before getting traction. She was arm's length when I managed to drive away. At last, I was on my way out of the creepy woods. I made my way to the asphalt road, and she appeared once again. The headlights illuminated her, casting a long shadow behind her. I hit the gas harder so I could try run her ass over. She lifted up a bony hand in the air and stepped to the right and swiped to my car as I flew by. She managed to penetrate the driver's side door with her claws, and I could hear her tear the metal all the way down to the rear end of my car. As I passed her at high speed, I looked into the rearview mirror and saw her standing in a slouchy position, just watching me through her stringy black hair. The red glow of the brake lights gave her a very demonized look. She got down on all fours and bear crawled her way back into the darkness, back where she belonged. I sped all the way home, ignoring all the speed limit signs and red lights. I didn't give a damn. I just wanted to get home as fast as possible. When I arrived, I parked my car in the driveway, turned off the engine, and sat there for a few minutes to gather my scattered thoughts. I exited my car to survey the damage the thing had done. But there was nothing there. Not a single scratch. I couldn't believe it. Did I imagine it all, I thought? No, it really did happen. My mind and brain were drained completely due to the fear I'd endured. I lit myself a cigarette, stood in my driveway, examining my car with my shifty eyes, trying to make sense of everything. I finished my cigarette, went inside, made sure all the doors and windows were locked, and never went back to my favorite fishing spot. No village was better to choose when trying to leave civilization. There was a violent storm rocking the boat when I was first heading there. The only thing penetrating the thick darkness was the beaming light from the lighthouse. Coming into shore, I saw people standing around like they were greeting my arrival. The island was like a big hill, and the houses of the village were swirling around it. Small wooden houses without a yard, like they were all sharing the land. The people were walking around slowly, some of them just back and forth. They looked apathetic, like they were lobotomized or on some heavy medication. I didn't have much packing, just the essentials: toothbrush, a few articles of clothing, and some books. The captain showed me to my little house. It was like a small cabin. The only thing there was a small bed, a sink and toilet right next to it, and some empty shelves. "So this is you. I will bring you breakfast from the local restaurant tomorrow, okay?" the captain said, and patted me on the shoulder. "That's fine," I said. I was so exhausted, so I crawled straight into bed. The captain turned around before leaving and said, "Oh, I almost forgot. These are yours." He handed me some small container of pills. "What is this? I don't take medication." He grinned. "Well, you don't want to be in this town without at least some sleeping pills. Take one tonight and you will sleep tight. Good night." Then he left my cabin and I took a pill and fell asleep. However, I woke up in the middle of the night by weird sounds. Moaning, sobbing and crying. I opened the blinders and looked out the window. In some of the cabins, people were sitting on their beds with their faces in their hands. Some of them were pacing back and forth across the floors. I took a look at myself in the mirror. I really looked exhausted, almost sick. I went back to bed and slept until the captain brought me breakfast. It was almost as dark as the night before, and the storm hadn't calmed down. The dark clouds were blocking the sun, and the whole village was covered in shadows. There was a silver tray with food in plastic bags, some carrots, French toast, and 2 small yogurts. The captain was making my bed while making small talk. "You might want to put on a raincoat if you'll be taking a walk today. It's raining a lot, but the weather is very fresh. You should get out and get to know the others. I'll be back with lunch in a few hours." I took the captain's advice and headed out after breakfast. The villagers were acting the same as last night, pacing around in circles. Some of them were sitting on their porches and playing cards, some were making puzzles, and some of them just stared blankly into space. I went past this man in his 70s who was smiling eerily at me. "So, what are you here for?" I thought the question was a bit strange, but just said that I wanted to get away for a while. He looked surprised. "You mean you're here voluntarily?" I laughed. "Yeah, of course. Aren't you?" He started laughing so hard that he almost fell down. "You're funny. I like you," he said, and just walked away. The encounters with the other people were as bizarre as this one, so I decided to get back to the cabin and read for a while. The captain came with lunch around noon. "The people here are crying all night. I could hardly sleep. What is this place?" "Some of the people here don't feel very well. That's why they're here. To get some rest and get some insight on what they've done." "What do you mean? What have they done?" "Oh, it's very diverse. Some of them have done horrible things. They will never be the same again. Some of them just lost control for a while and will be just fine in a few weeks." He left and said he had other people to bring lunch to. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. If you need me at any time, even at night, you just press this button." He pointed on a little red knob on the wall beside my bed. You have a button to call you? Yes, it buzzes in my office. You don't have a phone? Well, yes, I have a phone, but cell phones for the villagers aren't allowed. I was very perplexed about this. I decided to take a nap. I had strange fever dreams about my family which I'd almost forgot. I didn't know where they were or who they were anymore. I was at a family reunion, but no one talked to me, even when I talked to them. They looked angry and submissive. I woke up in the middle of the night by that incessant crying, sobbing, and now I could even hear agonized screams. It was driving me insane. I could only think about leaving this place. Looking at myself in the mirror again, I noticed that the edges were glowing, like there was a light behind it. I tried to peek through the cracks, and what seemed like an empty room was there. I shivered. What the hell was going on in this village? I went around the cabin to look for this room, but behind it was nothing. I ran inside again and packed my bags. I was getting the hell out of here. I put on my raincoat and ran as fast as I could towards the boat. I slipped around in the mud while the rain violently was blowing in my face. By the boat, there were 4 men in white coats talking to each other. I approached them and asked, "When does this boat leave? I want to get out of here." "Sorry, no patients or inmates may leave without a doctor's note or being escorted by their personal nurse." "What the hell are you talking about? I want to leave, now." "No can do, sir. You should get back in your room." "Get out of my way," I said, and pushed one of the men aside. "Get back here! You can't leave!" I started running towards the boat, but one of them pushed me down while another were putting cuffs on me. "Let go of me!" "Calm down. You don't want to end up in the isolation room tonight. Come on now, take it easy. Lie down." I squirmed to try to get loose. One of the men put a syringe into my arm, and everything went dark. I woke up in a straitjacket. I sat on the floor, and the captain was sitting on a chair. "Do you need some Valium?" I shook my head. He looked at me very severely. "You don't remember anything, do you?" "Remember what? I don't understand what's going on here." "I guess you don't even want to remember," he sighed. "But you have to accept that she's dead now, because if you don't, you'll never get out of here." "Who's dead?" "You know who. Just relax your thoughts and think." I knew who he was talking about now. My daughter. My 5-year-old daughter. But I couldn't remember how she died. What happened to her? "I think you should figure that one out for yourself. Can I take off the straitjacket now? You must be quite uncomfortable in it." I nodded. "You should go to bed. You'll need to be rested if you want to be your old self again." I did go to sleep. Those screams and that crying was making me uneasy when I woke up. I started crying too. I didn't even know where I was. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. I didn't even know how I was ever going to get out of here. What is it that I need to remember? What have I done? What has happened? Why was I here? I took some other pills, and it eased me a bit. I don't know what to do now, but there's something I have to accept. But I don't know what it is. I won't try to get out of here. I want to get better so I can go back to my normal me someday. And until I do, I know I will be here, stuffing pill after pill into my mouth until my brain gets scrambled enough for the pain to go away. I worked at a body farm in Knoxville, Tennessee for the past 5 years as a forensic entomologist. For those who don't know what a body farm is, a body farm is a research and training facility where human decomposition can be studied in a variety of settings. In plain English, we watch dead people decompose. There are only 7 of these in existence across the entire United States. The farm itself is scattered with bodies of all types. Most of the bodies are given to us by the individual before death or by the family after. Sometimes, when nobody claims a body, the city will give it to us to use on our farm. We take bodies of every race, gender, body type, etc. It is important to know how a fat person decomposes compared to a skinny person, or a female in her mid-30s versus a female in her 80s. We place the bodies in different places. Some are left out in an open field in the sun, some are in the forest, some are in the water, and others are placed in cages to stop birds like vultures from being able to pick at the bodies. We do not cover or cage all bodies since there are birds in nature. Having a body farm is a very important part of law enforcement, helping solve murders and questionable deaths. A missing person could be found days, weeks, or even years later. By having a body farm, we can determine how long the person has been dead. The shape the body is in will give law enforcement lots of important details. If a body has been dead a few days, you might just see the beginning stages such as the smell of a rotting corpse and the maggots. There are lots and lots of maggots. As time goes on, the body may be bloated with all the gases, and later on the skin will turn a brownish colour. It's a little like when a banana goes bad, it turns brown and mushy. Bodies are a lot like that. It also lets us study the environment after the body is decomposed. Did you know the vegetation where the body has rotted will die, leaving only a bare patch of dirt afterward? Even more interesting, when vegetation grows back in a place a body was at, after the grass will be healthier and taller than the surrounding vegetation. Next time you're on a hike and you see a taller patch of grass, someone may have been murdered there. Kind of cool, right? The way the body farm is set up is a large, fenced-in rectangle area with the admin building in the front. Once outside, there is a large field with a small tree lining the side fence with a gate. At the back, there is a pond/swampy type area. On the right, it is a wooded area extended back away to the bordering fence. The total size is almost 5 acres. On the adjoining side of the wooded area fence is a restricted military area. Nobody knows exactly what they're doing on the other side of the fence. Hardly anyone even knows it exists, because publicly, they don't exist. For the past 5 years I've worked here, I've always wondered what they were hiding in there. The area is locked down like Area 51. There is the barbed wire topped fence, security cameras, armed guards posted 24/7, and motion detection lights around the perimeter. I could never stop thinking of why they would want to place something that important on a body farm, and what type of weird experiments they might do inside those walls. I had to somehow find out. Some days I would walk close to the enclosure. You could see nothing since whatever they were hiding was on the other side of the wooded area. But I just wanted to see how close I could get to the fence before they sent someone or the motion detection cameras caught me. The answer is about 15 feet from the fence before you are noticed. One guard asked me what I was up to, but I just told him I was walking the grounds, checking on the bodies, and apologized for him having to come out. He bought the excuse and seemed happy not to accidentally cross any decaying bodies on our side. I was given a warning by my supervisor and told to stay away from the fence. I am sure the military bosses were not happy someone was prowling along their fence. I backed off for a few weeks, but eventually started to patrol in different areas around their fence. Eventually, I found a place where their cameras had a blind spot. I could get right up to the fence, and nobody noticed. Over the next few weeks, I continued to visit this part of the fence and stay there for longer and longer, and luckily, nobody ever came to check things out. I threw some sticks over the fence to see if it would trip a motion detector, but again, nothing happened. A dead zone. This might be the place I've been searching for. Curiosity has always gotten the best of me. I started to make my plan to break in and see what they were doing over there. I put a wire cutter in my work backpack and cut a small section of the fence until it was large enough for me to squeeze through. I waited for 8 weeks and the fence was never repaired. It looked like I had my way inside. I just had to work up the nerve to sneak in. I finally decided to do it. On the day of my attempt, I left work early for an appointment and then came back later to finish my shift. It gave me a great excuse for working over to catch up on my hours. After everyone left, I clocked out and moved my truck to a parking lot close by. I changed my clothes, then walked back to the body farm and snuck in the side gate using my keys. I made my way to the fence and took a small break. I quickly thought about what might happen if they caught me. Would they kill me? A body farm would be a perfect place to dump a dead body, right? I took a deep breath to calm my nerves and pushed on the slit in the fence. As I slipped through the fence, I accidentally scratched the inside part of my hand, grabbing the cut fence. Some blood started to appear, but hopefully it wouldn't leave any on the fence. I'll have to wash it off tomorrow during my shift. I made it through the fence and waited for motion lights or alarms to go off, but there was only silence. I was in. I slowly walked through the forest, trying my best not to make a sound or move quickly enough to catch anybody's attention. Eventually, I made my way to a clearing in the trees and looked out to see an open field, then 3 buildings. There was nothing here. It was just 3 small buildings in an open field. One building was larger than the other 2. I assumed that is where the headquarters was. For all the secrecy and security, they are running a small operation. Whatever they are doing must be inside one of the buildings. I need to get closer to the buildings and maybe I can catch a glimpse inside. I snuck around to the back side of the building. The rear side was closer and gave me a better view. I think I found what I was looking for. Behind the closest building, there were 4 of the body cages with what looked like 4 bodies inside. They looked like the same ones we were using to keep birds off the dead bodies on our side. Why would they do body farm experiments when they could just use our body farm instead? It would be too dangerous to risk moving out of the wooded area, so I just sat and watched. Maybe I would see someone coming or going and could learn a little more about what they were doing here. I could always come back and watch more now that I had a way in. After about an hour, someone came out of the building, wearing a face mask and gloves. I prayed they had not seen me. Then he stopped at the cages. Why would he be going to look at a dead body in the middle of the night in basically a hazmat suit? They're dead bodies. It's a bit overkill. He grabbed what looked like a stick off the top of the cage and then poked the body inside the first cage. The body rolled over and got up on all fours, back touching the top of the cage. The guard threw something inside the cell, and it started to devour its food like a starving dog. He banged on the cage of the next one, and the body inside threw itself against the cage and let out a growl. This one kept throwing itself against the cage, trying to get the guard, but eventually settled for its meal. The third cage must have been empty as he passed it by. He walked up to the fourth cage, and the body inside was already up on all fours, waiting for him. This one seemed different. This one looked more alive than the others. Then it spoke. "Please, just kill me. Don't turn me into one of those." The guard ignored this one and threw something in the cage, then went back inside. This is what I came for. This is what they have been keeping secret. I know I should turn back, but I'm too close to not figure out the truth. This might be my only chance. I have to go see what they are keeping caged up. I watched the first two cage animals eat their meals, but the fourth one is the one I was most interested in. That one ignored his meal and was a person. Why was he locked up with the other things? He wasn't an animal. I waited a little longer, then decided enough time had passed since the guard had gone back inside. I crouched down and ran towards the body cages. As I ran past the first three cages, the creatures inside started growling and throwing themselves at the side of the cage, trying to attack me. They need to stop drawing so much attention. I quickly went to the fourth one. Inside was a man who looked underweight and sick. "Help! Help!" he yelled. "You gotta get me out of here." "Shut up before they come and see what is causing all this noise," I said. "What the hell is going on here?" "They are injecting us with a virus that turns us into one of those," he said, and pointed at the cage next to him. "What the hell are those things?" I asked as I looked at the things in the cages. The one next to us had to be a decaying body that had been dead for about 6 months, but somehow was still alive. The skin had a brownish tint to it, and the arms and legs had started to rot. The body and head itself was in surprising shape compared to its limbs. "The virus, it kills everything non-essential to life. That is why half of it is rotting," he said. "Their mind is gone. All they care about is keeping the virus alive by feeding it." "Zombies? That's impossible," I said, staring at one in disbelief. "How is it even alive with its body decaying?" "The only thing alive on those is the virus. The rest is a shell," he said. "Holy crap. Is it contagious?" I asked. "It's a virus. Of course it is. Right now, it only spreads by open cuts, but it's evolving. It could eventually turn airborne." He was still talking when he was interrupted. "What the hell is going on out there?" a guard yelled. "Shut the hell up before I beat you with a stick again." The guard slammed the door shut. "Damn, I gotta go. I can't be caught. They will turn me into one of those things if they catch me," I said. "Please, you gotta help me," the sickly one said as he reached out and grabbed my hand. "I'm not one of them yet. You gotta help me." "I can't right now," I said and pulled my arm away. "I've got to get out of here." I looked at the buildings to make sure no guards were watching and ran back into the wooded area. Somehow I made it back to the relative safety of the woods. I backtracked to where I'd cut the hole in the fence and pushed myself through. I took the side gate out and walked back to my truck. I drove home, trying to grasp what I had seen. I wish I'd just followed the rules and forgot about the restricted area. My curiosity always screws me over. I took a shower and cleaned off. I put some triple antibiotic where I'd cut my hand on the fence and covered it with a band-aid. Once I lay down on my bed, exhaustion overtook me and I fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, I woke up feeling like hell. I looked at my phone and had 7 missed calls from work, and it was already 2 p.m. I tried to lift my head up off my pillow, but I was too weak. I closed my eyes and fell back asleep. "Josh? Josh!" I heard my girlfriend saying while someone was shaking my body. I opened my eyes and saw her leaning over me. "Ashley, what are you doing?" I tried to say, but it came out as a whisper. "You're awake," she said. "You've been sleeping for 3 days. I was about to call an ambulance. When I came to check on you yesterday, you had a fever of over 104. I was going to call an ambulance, but you said to just let you sleep and rolled over." "I'm okay, really," I said. I wasn't really okay, but I was at least awake. That is an improvement. "What is my temperature now?" 101. "It was just a small virus or something I must have caught," I said. Wait, did I just say virus? Oh no. Wait, I bet it was all just a dream. Fever dreams can be crazy. That must be it. I looked down and saw my left hand still had a bandage on it. "What happened to my hand?" I asked. "It was like that when I came over," Ashley said. "You worked late the other night. I must have went to bed sick when you got home." There is no way I could have caught that virus. I must have caught something else, and I am getting better. It has been a few days, and I'm feeling better, but I am worried. I think I might have the virus. Thinking back on the night, the one in the cage grabbed my hand with a cut on it. It is possible I contracted the virus from him. It makes sense of how I got it, and also explains the flu-like symptoms. Even worse, Ashley is now in bed, sick with a high fever. I think she may have caught it from me. I don't know what to do next. If I take her to a doctor, they will discover the virus and have her quarantined. Then she will tell them she caught it from me. Once the military doctors discover we caught the virus, they will either have us killed or put into the cages as another experiment. The only other option we have is to run when she is feeling better. I don't know how I'm going to explain this to her. I just hope that the virus is only contagious when you have a fever. We're screwed. As you may have expected, though probably not with a particularly correct prescience, the siege of Area 51 ended disastrously for everyone involved. How do I know? I was with the deluded, though determined, congregation that stormed the base. Our numbers were minuscule in comparison to those who had pledged their participation online, but still we raided as a formidable army. Hundreds sprinted collectively in a kind of mutually shared mania. Our speeds, though impressive, did not surpass those of bullets. The guards were posted in a perimeter around the base befitting any other military establishment. They hadn't expected a serious effort, at least not one of our size, and when we approached en masse, bored inexperienced and sun-fatigued soldiers snapped to delayed attention as we beleaguered the compound. Some of us were immediately dispatched by on-site deterrents, buried proximity-censored activated anti-personnel turrets loaded with non-lethal rounds. Bodies fell in clusters, and a sizable portion of our admittedly pitiful army immediately turned back towards their vehicles. Those of us that persisted, determined to uncover the secrets of that legendary base, continued the onslaught, armed with naught but our cameras, makeshift gadgets, and curiosity. I remember leaping over a fallen comrade, his eyes pouring tears, as he dabbed delicately with a napkin at a large red mark on his forehead where he'd been struck by one of the automated defense system's pellets. The group-borne energy was quickly depleted in the face of the base's efficient weaponry. By the time myself and others reached the actual fence that enclosed the base, the guards had taken up a position of suppression, which would have easily been our doom if some of us hadn't anticipated such quick failure before we had even set foot on the actual grounds. No one had brought weapons, so as to avoid being charged with any major felonies, though we had equipped ourselves with various devices which we believed to be inimical to the human psyche. Every manner of hypnotic and hallucinogenic construction was employed. Devices meant to stun, disorientate, confuse and befuddle, hastily prepared and not so expertly used. Most of the guards targeted merely laughed, while others seemed to succumb, albeit minimally, to the desired effects. However, this momentary lapse in concentration and formation was all we needed, and our sheer numbers collided with theirs to our favour. Upon reaching the perimeter fence, a great, exultant roar could be heard, as our forces tasted a small, yet totally unforeseen victory, and the guards who had been gatekeepers merely stood in disbelief. Though our numbers had been reduced to only a few dozen, we surged through the massive plot of land with as much fervour as before, and dispersed into smaller groups to cover more ground. My group, comprised of those who sought the answers to Roswellian mysteries and hoped to capture images of the extra-mundane nature, entered a long and seemingly spacious building to the east of the compound. The building's construction suggested use as a hangar for aircraft, and I'm sure you can guess what sort of aircraft we expected to find. More guards were present there, though we dispatched them without issue using our hypnotic gadgetry. Inside, though indeed a hangar, we found only the regular, mundane aerial vehicles of earthen design. We maintained radio contact with the other group, and to our great disappointment, they reported similar failure in uncovering any extraterrestrial artifacts. Strangely, the group that believed the base housed non-alien yet equally preternatural objects or presences hadn't reported their findings. My group unanimously agreed that this was troubling, due to that group containing the hardest, most devoted of our congregation. We set out to find the silent detachment, a flame of interest reignited within us. By then, our numbers had dwindled to a fraction of what had first entered, most of them having been detained or slain by the armed personnel, who saw our ransacking and loitering as troublesome enough to warrant serious retaliation. Gunfire was heard, blood was smelled, and screams were unnervingly cut short all around us. My group came across a duo of rather trigger-happy guards who had just neutralized an entire gang of truth-seekers, and if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of a brave inquisitor, we all would have fallen. He charged at the guards, tackling them to the ground, allowing for us to escape into an unmarked building whose stairs led into the earth. Behind us, we heard struggling, and then the report of a rifle. The building stairs led down for a great distance, and though I was never particularly good with determining geographical scale, I am at least certain that our descent measured a mile, perhaps more. Concrete walls and stairs descended indeterminably, the passageway illuminated at intervals by simple bulbs that dangled from chains affixed to the ceiling. We grew wary despite the downward trek, and 2 members fell down from exhaustion. When we turned to help them up, they demanded we continue on. Eventually, we arrived at a large metal door with a simple crank serving as a knob. I turned the crank and, after a strenuous effort, managed to open the door, which revealed a massive, dimly lit room whose walls were lined with humming machinery. I recognized none of the devices and terminals that littered the room, nor did my companions, and most of what we saw seemed to be of a technological order several years beyond anything of our time. The room a gallery of super scientific design. In the center of the room was a raised, square black pad, about 12 by 12 feet, slightly bigger than a bedroom, with a metal podium linked to machinery nearby. A sort of lamp hung over the platform, and a network of thick wiring and tubing led from the space into the unlit recesses of the room. Despite the ostensibly inert state of the machinery, we heard and felt a constant vibration emanate from the construction, a power of some kind that flowed to or from the weird platform. As we circled the thing, examining the various aspects of it, which I've related here, we at one point heard gunfire from the stairway we had left, and subsequently, the agonized cries of the exhausted couple therein. Our awestruck examinations turned to panicked, frantic searching as we looked for some manner of defense from the attackers, or escape from the room. No doors could be found, and the only items capable of being weaponized were several steel chairs placed before the bizarre machinery. Doubting our success against military combatants, I decided to try and make use of the focal pad. I'd seen enough science fiction media to speculate that its use was of a transportive nature. Intuition and common sense allowed me to activate the machine to some degree, and the pad's overhanging lamp glowed hotly above us. Still determined to fight off the guards with chairs, my companions gathered at the door and attempted to bar it with a chair leg, leaving me to operate the machine. After a series of button presses of no particular order, the pad began emanating a low yet powerful hum, and a digital display on the podium began counting down from 30. A small screen to the left of this displayed a series of numbers, which obviously pertained to date, and without needing a second of self-reassurance, I plotted a temporal location considerably before the current date. I practically leaped into the pad, and just as I felt the vibrations and strange, inexpressible pulsations overcome my body, I saw the door-defending group blown back by some explosive device. What happened next, I cannot accurately describe. There was the sensation of dematerialization, of atomical destruction and subsequent reformation, and then a transference of form, not across physical distance, but through some more abstract, illimitable expanse, as if I were blasted to particles and my constituent debris remade elsewhere among a wholly different sphere of existence. I do not know if it was through time or reality I travelled, if my instantaneous voyage was of chronological reversal, or if I had been admitted to a reality where the entity resembling myself had not yet embarked on that ill-fated assault. If this is truly my original world, and I've defied the once irreversible current of time, then I can only warn you all of what will happen if you attend that stupid, perilous storm. If the machine's purpose is of an arguably grander nature, and I've been cast into a mirrored realm of my own, then my admonishment still stands. My sister is a genius. When she was about 13, she made this device that honestly still blows my mind. I've spent my entire life studying physics, and I still don't know what she did or how, which is probably for the best considering how this all played out. I don't know how she did it, but what I do know is in the summer of 2003, the laws governing matter and atomic mass didn't seem to affect her anymore. She was invisible to the human eye, and she was speaking a universal language we've never been able to identify or reproduce. Before I get into this though, have you ever seen Firefly? Allow me to quote, "I am very smart. I went to the best medic ed in Osiris, top 3% of my class, finished my internship in 8 months. Gifted is the term. So when I tell you that my little sister makes me look like an idiot child, I want you to understand my full meaning." This quote could have been written about me and my sisters. We come from a long line of gifted people. My father is a neurologist, my mother works for SpaceX, and my eldest sister is an artist who's been featured in galleries since she was 12. I am a full-time research associate of high-energy density physics at a university I can't name without risking my career. And, like Simon Tam from Firefly before me, I don't tell you all of this to flaunt our intelligence or make us look special. I tell you this so you can fully understand what I mean when I say Nirali made us all look like idiot children. In 2003, I was about to turn 17. My interests weren't like most teens, so I won't bore you with the details of what I found more entertaining than TV, books, or the mall. But more often than not, I was occupied with personal research projects. The first time Nirali made herself invisible, I was in the middle of a research rabbit hole. I was deep into some really heady academic articles when I heard Nirali pipe up behind me. "They're wrong, you know." I groaned inwardly. We'd had a knocking talk, but she was still so bad at respecting boundaries. "Nirali, what did I say about knocking?" "Oh," she said, and sounded genuinely surprised. "I didn't think about the door." "What?" I frowned and spun my chair around to look at her. My room was empty. Wait, empty? I looked around briefly before rubbing my eyes, wondering when I'd slept last and already writing the conversation off as an auditory hallucination. Shaking my head, I started to turn back to my computer when I heard her giggle. "All right, jerkhole, where are you?" "Right here," she giggled, her voice coming from directly in front of me. "What the? How? Did you hide the speakers again?" I stood up, taking a moment to really look around the room. She'd pulled a prank like this before, hiding a complex set of speakers she'd modified to create confluence of sound she could manipulate. It would sound like someone was anywhere in the room she specified. She'd even made it sound like she was moving around. It was really impressive, especially since she'd only been 10 at the time. This time though, she'd either gotten much better at hiding the speakers, or something else was going on. She giggled again. "No speakers, just me." "Okay, just me. But how?" I folded my arms, looking in the direction of a disembodied voice. "That's going to be hard to explain." That was Nirali for you. You won't get it mentality. "Try me," I said, because I'm stubborn. She did though, and I didn't. I had the beginnings of a migraine chewing on my right eye by the time she was done. Almost none of it made sense. There was something about atomic frequencies and post-dimensional drift, superliminal desynchronization, and something she dubbed the Planck supertemporal parallel. It was all way over my head. "Okay," I said, rubbing my temples. I tried to digest it all. But how did you get here? I what? Infuriating. I mean, how did you get in here? I gestured widely to the door, which was closed, and the walls around us. Oh, I could hear a shrug in her voice. I just walked where the walls weren't. I squinted at the spot I thought she was standing. You... what? She sighed. It was a special sigh. It was the kind of sigh that told you someone much smarter than you was put out at having to dumb something down enough for you to understand. An embarrassed heat flooded my cheeks. I knew she was smarter than me, smarter than all of us, but it still made me feel like I failed simple math in front of Neil deGrasse Tyson and a puppy, and they were both disappointed. I walked where the walls weren't. The walls aren't everywhere, Divya. In fact, in most places, like realities, the walls aren't there at all, so I just walk in those places. I wanted to see the proofs of this statement, though I knew she wouldn't have bothered writing them down, except in scraps and incomplete snippets that only made sense to her. I also knew the proofs wouldn't make any more sense than her original explanation. Even so, it bothered me that I only understood what she meant in the vaguest, most conceptual way. It wasn't natural for me. That abstractness of thought warred with the linear way of my brain, making actual understanding impossible, and I hated it. Sana would have understood. Her brain worked that way, but not mine. I must have looked like I was struggling with it, and I was, but she continued. Where I am, or technically when and how, everything is a Schrodinger's puzzle of is and isn't. All I have to do is observe the places where the state of something isn't and go there. This wasn't helping. I mean, it was. I got the basic concept of what she was saying, but in terms of the practical application of physics, it was a mess of meaningless, sciencey buzzwords. Nothing she said had any foundation in known science. She could have told me, I ate ice cream upside down and chained purple backwards 30 times and the wall turned to jello, but only as long as I looked at it from a 45-degree angle. And it would have been exactly as scientifically sound as what she'd actually said. Yet, she was the one who was invisible. So, the limits of my understanding and science itself had no bearing on her corporeal existence. Do you still have a body? I mean, can I see you? Oh yeah, she said, her voice pitched higher in excitement. I look like 100 versions of me laid on top of each other. Looking at my hands and stuff is kinda trippy, but I'm here. Cool. I had no idea what to do with this information. She started giggling again. What now? I can't believe you haven't noticed yet. Noticed what? I couldn't keep the flash of irritation out of my voice. It wasn't easy to accept the premise that she'd managed to trick physics into letting her pass through matter while being imperceptible to the human eye, but I'd had just about all the how much dumber than Nurali are you I could take for the day. What language am I speaking? I had to blink at that and think a moment. It's English, isn't it? She giggled again. Say something, I ordered in my most authoritative older sibling voice. Nor again is there anyone who loves or pursues or desires to obtain pain of itself, because it is pain, but because occasionally circumstances occur in which toil and pain can produce him some great pleasure. If I concentrated, I could tell the words she was saying didn't quite match up what I was apparently translating in my head, but I couldn't hear them for what they were, except... Wait, is that the lorem ipsum translation from De Finibus Bonorum et Malorum? She giggled again. Yep, Want me to try something in Hindi? Yeah, I said, a little stunned and more than a little curious. Go for it. May he, in whose lap shines forth the daughter of the mountain king, who carries the celestial stream on his head, and whose brow rests the crescent moon, whose throat holds poison, and whose breast is support of a huge serpent, and who is adorned by the ashes on his body, may that chief of gods, the lord of all, the destroyer of the universe, the omnipresent Shiva, the moon-like Shankara, ever protect me. I frowned, torn between focusing on the words and trying to identify what she was quoting. I started mouthing some of the words as my mind ran back over them, and gulped a little as recognition settled in. Did you just quote the Ramcharitmanas' Ayoda Kandification? Another giggle. But how? That didn't sound like Hindi at all. Fascinating, she said. It didn't feel like Hindi when I said it, but I was thinking the Hindi words. What did it sound like to you? English, I guess. I mean, it didn't sound like anything, but I understood you in English. That's so cool. Can you actually hear something other than English? Kinda. I mean, almost. If I try, I can tell the sounds you're making don't match the meaning of the words I'm not hearing, but understanding. But the meaning overrides everything else, so I can't actually identify individual sounds or phrases. Do you think you could identify the physical linguistics if we went word by word? It may be the process of complete phrases prevent the identification of individual phononyms. Maybe, I said, shrugging, still trapped in awe of this aspect of her discovery. We could try it. She had me run her through some general object identification to give me a chance to listen for the sound she was making and how they differed from the words I knew, the words I was hearing. But I only ever caught the ghost of divergent beginnings and ends. She thought this was hilarious. I thought it was magical. She started making regular trips to my room in this state, usually after lights out or when our parents were at work. I didn't blame her for sneaking. Sana wasn't into the science stuff, and if our parents knew what we'd been up to, we'd have been grounded for life, especially since Nirali had already been banned from experimental projects at home. The last one had required a lot of external help and several $1,000s to clean up. But someone had to try and catalogue this universal lexicon, and this was the only way she had access to it. One night, as we lay awake on the floor naming objects, we tried making individual sounds before, but without the intent of meaning behind them, there was no divergence. Nirali froze. I couldn't see her, of course, but something changed. She stilled to the point I worried she'd maybe passed through the floor or something and left me alone. But somehow, I still felt her presence, along with something sharp and alien I couldn't identify. Nirali? I whispered, cold unease settling on me like snow. Shush. It was her, but so quiet I almost missed it. I felt the urgency behind it though, and hushed to wait in the silence with her. As the seconds ticked by, a prickling dread crawled across the room. It started at the edges where the shadows were thickest and spread outward, tainting everything it touched, including me. My pulse quickened as a primal paranoia sank in. I knew it was just Nirali and me, but it felt like a predator was stalking the shadows, searching for us, and it was only our silence that kept it from pouncing. To keep the paranoia at bay, I focused on the warm red readout of the clock above my desk. The slowly changing numbers were soothing and hypnotic. They dulled the edges of my fear until at some point between midnight and 2 a.m, I fell asleep. I only realized this when Nirali finally whispered to me, pulling me back to reality. "Divya, wake up." I swam back to consciousness slowly, shaking off the half-formed discomfort of a dream I couldn't remember. "It's gone now." "What's gone?" I rubbed the sleep, still clogging my vision, and blinked at the clock above my desk. So late. Had we really been laying on the floor for 2 hours? Nirali didn't answer. Not for a long time. Long enough that I thought maybe I dreamed her waking me up entirely. "The shadow behind the walls," she whispered, cutting the silence away like cobwebs. There was a weight to her words I couldn't describe that tickled the primal centers of my brain again, an ancient urge calling to me, telling me to hide. "The what?" I croaked, propping myself up on my elbows. But Nirali was gone. Not just quiet. There was a difference in the room when she left, and I could always sense it, even if she didn't say she was going. A few minutes later, she was at my bedroom door, actually knocking. The sound startled me, giving my heart a sudden workout with a spike of adrenaline. I snuck over to the door to let her in, too keenly aware of the night around me and jumping at shadows I suddenly worried couldn't be trusted. Without a word, she slipped past me and crawled into bed, hiding beneath the covers with her knees against the wall and her back to me. I took my cue, as it was offered, and crawled in behind her, offering myself as protection against the night. Sleep was slow in coming, as my body flushed the survival instincts from its veins. But eventually it must have come, as the next thing I knew, the sun was peeking through the windows and Nirali was watching me sleep. "Divya?" Nirali said my name like she was testing it, as if she didn't expect to hear it again. "Yeah?" "Nothing," she said, curling back under the covers before adding, "Thanks." It was a week before she came to me through the walls again. "I think it's drawn to the language," she said, pulling me out of a dream about superfluid. "What is?" I yawned, oddly comfortable with the resumption of our nightly conversations. "The shadow behind the walls." "What is that?" "I don't know. Something big, something old. Older than time, maybe." "What's with the Sana talk? Older than time?" "I don't know, Divya, but it's what it feels like." She was always like this, caught somewhere between science and emotion, like the perfect cross between me and Sana. I think it allowed her to think abstractly enough to escape the box of the known to innovate, or remaining linear enough to build a new box to house her innovations. But sometimes it meant she didn't have the math to back it up. Sometimes it was just a feeling or the hint of a notion. But even then, Nirali's feelings were always on spot, even if it took science a few decades to prove it. "All right," I said, accepting that answer. It was odd. I realized then how a few weeks of exposure to what my mind told me was frantically impossible opened me to the flexibility of the possible. I was surprised too, when I noticed my first instinct wasn't to challenge her or demand proof just because what she said was beyond my experience or immediate comprehension. Instead, I would nod and accept that what she said, what she experienced, was simply truth, and the limitations of my understandings couldn't change that. "What does it want?" "I don't know. I don't think it talks, but I think it listens and understands." "That's unsettling," I said, shifting under the covers. The superstitious child in me made sure my feet were hidden in the center of the bed because the shadows couldn't be trusted. She hummed her agreement. "It's not the only thing here, though." A chill surged through me, prompting my heart into a panicked gallop. "What do you mean?" I mean, there are other things. Big things. Old things. Most of them can't see me, I think. I'm not really where they are. Same as I'm not really where you are. But they can hear me. Same as you. Are you safe? Nirali was silent. My stomach churned, because I knew it meant something big and old and dangerous was near enough to pose a threat. After several minutes passed, she answered, "Sometimes." "Only sometimes?" I sat up, staring at the spot on the floor where she would have been seated. "Only sometimes." "Then why are you still doing this, Nirali? I wouldn't have agreed if I knew you were in danger." "I know," she said quietly, "but there's so much here. If I focus on a colour, I can experience everything that colour has ever been and ever will be. If I think about time, I'm sitting in what used to be here, or sometimes what will be here, watching a blur of activity that won't happen for another 1,000 years. I've seen cities you can't even begin to imagine, made of glittering bone and glass, monolithic wonders to shame the gods. Last night I was standing in the centre of a black hole. Not a hologram or a simulation, but an actual black hole. Captured, contained, reproduced, harnessed. I didn't know what. But it was here, and so was I. And through the black hole, I saw so many other universes, all laid out like mirrors into infinity." "Nirali," I whispered, both awed and terrified. Had she been experiencing these things every night? All the hours we talked about nothing and nonsense? "But there are also bigger things," she said, her voice dipping into darkness. "Things that hide in the glint of starlight on glass. Things that follow me back from the future and wait for me in the past. They skip like stones on water, only touching the surface for a minute and never with their whole selves. But even that much is too much. It hurts to look at them. They are too many in shapes at once, and all of them are hungry in ways I don't understand." Tears welled in my eyes as I listened to her. It hurt to accept these things as truth. I couldn't understand them or touch them or even experience them myself, but I had to accept they were real, because my sister was invisible. She could pass through matter at will and spoke a universal language to me every night. But accepting all that also meant accepting that my sister spent every night compelled by her own curiosity to go back to this dangerous state again and again, only to be terrified by what waited in between. I'm glad they can't see me, but I don't think that will be true much longer. What? Why? The shadow behind the wall has been in my room all week. I can feel it following me around. It's listening now, but I don't think it will come in your room again. Nene, you have to stop this. I can't, she said, her voice thick with imminent tears. Of course you can. Just come back and we'll destroy whatever you've been using to shift. We can fix this. No, she said, the word wet and bent beneath an anguish no 13-year-old should have known. You don't understand. What could possibly be worth the risk? My heart broke in the silence that stretched between us. An eternity of pain and longing swirled between us, and one final fragile breath spoke of the tears she held back when she found her voice again. I can't speak English anymore. I didn't understand. Like the first time she described the math to me, this statement defied understanding. What do you mean you can't speak English anymore? I mean, I can't speak anything but this stupid between language, Divya. I tried and tried all week, but all that comes out now is this ugly mess of gurgles and scrapes and noises I don't recognize. and I'm so scared. I'm so scared, because they can still hear me when I'm out there with you, and out there I'm not invisible. And you, and Sana, and Mom, and Dad aren't invisible. None of us are safe when I'm out there. And the only time I can talk right is when I'm in here," she sobbed. "When I'm here with you." My heart turned somersaults in my stomach. I let this happen. I should have stopped her the day she showed me her stupid science-shattering trick. "Nene," I whispered, and all I wanted to do was hold her until everything was right. "You have to come back. I don't know what we'll do to fix this, but you can't stay there." "I know," she said through a heavy veil of tears. "I just didn't want to lose you. To lose us. You still have me. But I won't out there. Not like this." I didn't have a good answer for her. "We'll find a way to fix it," was all I could say. And we both knew it wasn't enough. We also knew that it had to be, because we didn't have a choice. I felt her presence fade, and a few minutes later, there was a quiet knock at my door. Nirali stood on the other side, shaking, as silent sobs racked her now narrow frame. I gathered her up, shutting the door behind her, and together we curled around each other on the floor and cried. We cried until we passed out from exhaustion and woke up long after the sun had risen. I woke up to Nirali watching me again and blinked away the haze of tear-stained sleep. "Nirali," she nodded, mute, a sadness hanging over her shoulders. "Can you..." She shook her head. "Nothing?" She glanced up, looking over me and toward the hall as someone passed by. I could tell a million thoughts were flitting through her head in that moment, most of them conflicting, but after a minute or so, a stony resolution had settled in her eyes and she scooted closer, waving for me to do the same. Her mouth was almost against my ear when something unimaginably foul rattled from her lips. A shudder of revulsion rocked through me at the sound of each mangled phoneme. I've never been so disgusted and terrified in my life. I could hear her voice, but it was dripping with caustic venom, dragging over hot coals, buried in the deepest ocean, and clawing at the edges of sanity with angry talons. It was wrong. And to this day, it was the most vile, viscerally upsetting experience of my life. The words, this language, was never meant to be spoken by man. Science won't support me, but I know in my bones these words have power man wasn't meant to use. And yet, despite my mind rebelling from the mere sound of a voice warped around these hideous words, I still knew what she'd meant, as if she'd said it in English. "Don't tell Mom and Dad." There's a word in Japanese which describes the situation where humans disappear inexplicably, removed from this earth without anyone noticing. Kami kakushi. Kami means deity. Kakushi means the act of hiding or hidden away. In the old days, people believed that when someone disappeared without a trace, the gods that lived in the mountains, forest or waters took them. Sometimes they returned just as inexplicably as they'd gone, unharmed. Other times, they were found dead somewhere. Most of the time, though, they simply disappear forever. Studio Ghibli lovingly adopted this concept into a classic animated family movie, but the actual history behind the phenomenon is possibly far more sinister. I want to share with you a narrative from my grandpa, who'd spent his younger years living in a village in rural Japan. He had been in a hospice for his last couple of years, and it was during one of those last visits I paid him that he shared this experience with me. I'm posting this half hoping that anyone out there who has heard of or been through a similar experience will find this and find me. It was something that had bothered my grandpa in his last days, and I truly wish I could find an explanation on his behalf. I don't know exactly when it happened. He wasn't able to recall dates clearly, but Grandma later told me it was way before she'd met him. My best guess from this and Grandpa's story is that it probably happened around the late 1950s. It was one of those small types of villages that are amongst a cluster of villages, where they all kind of blend into each other, and no one knew exactly how many distinct villages there were. Only people who lived there could tell them apart. They worshipped gods there, but they weren't any of the common Shinto gods I was familiar with, nor were they anything from the Hyaki, Yagyo, and Maki. I think it had to do with the time period back then. People would invite statues of pagan gods into their homes for blessing, out of less than religious reasons, which were usually a blend of deities from different cultures. He said that when he was young, a lot of young men were leaving home to find work or better education in Tokyo and other big cities. The economy was flourishing. People started looking forward to a busy urban life, and everyone was always talking about big changes coming this way. Then, on an otherwise completely unremarkable day, a boy from one of the neighbouring villages went missing. He remembered when the news spread to his village, and it was after dusk. He was, at the time, deeply disturbed by the timing. It meant that the boy went missing when the sun was going down. They called that time of day Omagataki, the time of meeting demons. Sundown was a weird time for some people because they believed that's when the doors to the underworld would open and humans would be able to see the otherwise invisible creatures that roamed at night. The missing boy's mom found some abandoned toys in a field where a vast forest lay just beyond the grass, so they assumed he'd wandered too far and got lost in the trees. A lot of people went looking for him, all night and then the next day. But they never found the boy. The older kids in my grandpa's village were all saying it was Kamikakashi, that he was taken from the field because he somehow made the forest gods angry. His dad came back from Kyoto. My grandpa wasn't sure if it was Kyoto. About a week later, and organised a search party, but everyone knew by then that it was too late. What happened next got really weird, and I'm not sure if my grandpa even remembered things correctly, but according to him, a couple of days after the dad came back, that entire family vanished from their home. People searched the house, the surrounding areas, and even went into the forest. But they were gone. And they left everything behind. There was leftover food on the stove, clothes laid out on the mats. Some chicken feed was left out in the yard, as if they got up in the middle of their chores and walked away from their life. Most of the village suspected that the dad took his family back to the cities overnight because they didn't want to keep looking for their son anymore. But between the village kids, everything about the disappearance made a creepy legend. The old people at the time, among some of the more superstitious type, prayed by roadside shrines to their gods and asked them to protect the children. The third time it happened to an older girl, a couple of years older than my grandpa, who was getting ready to be married. Her family kind of freaked out and got these exorcists, not sure what they were, to come, who performed some type of elaborate ritual to try and locate the girl. It's a bit unclear what happened there, but people got spooked and stopped letting their kids play outside, saying that it was an animal attack. It was a pretty big deal for a while, and they looked for signs of large animals coming out of the mountain. But he didn't remember if they'd found anything. The only thing he remembered was that the disappearances never stopped. At some point, they just gave up looking for the missing people. It was a weird time back then, because a lot of families were leaving the villages anyways, and they'd always say that so-and-so moved to a big city. They had such and such relatives there who's running some type of small business and the whole family left to join them. Or, remember that kid from so-and-so's home? They sent him to a school in the city. Most people believed that no one ever went missing. They just simply moved away. It seemed odd that a lot of them left in the middle of the night without taking anything with them, just like the first family did. But people were under some sort of influence of rapidly changing era, and no one really thought too much about it. The girl who was supposed to get married? My grandpa heard her family eventually left too, but he wasn't sure if they actually moved or disappeared. These incidents kept happening in random villages, so people didn't always hear about them, but everyone personally knew at least one or two families that seemingly left all their things behind and vanished overnight. For my grandpa, it was his neighbours. He'd been friends with the neighbour's kid since they were little boys. The day before it happened, they were playing outside, not far from home, since they both had to be indoors before sundown. As the sky turned orange and the sun a blood-red hue, my grandpa thought it was time to go home. He told me that this was when he saw a humanoid thing appear on the horizon. It kind of hovered on the gravel road, or it was walking, but because the setting sun was blinding and dyed everything a vague, warm colour, he couldn't tell. He knew it wasn't just a person walking by, because the thing had more than one pair of arms, and they all hung down the sides as it sort of moved across the road and gradually dissipated into the orange air next to the fence outside his friend's house. He didn't fully understand the significance of that moment at the time, so he acted normal and told his friend he was going home. They agreed to go fishing at a nearby creek the next day. Come morning time, my grandpa came out to find his parents in their neighbour's home, and they told him that the neighbours had vanished. His friend, their parents, their siblings, everyone was gone. He remembered hearing his dad say it was weird for them to leave without saying anything, because the two families had been close friends. His mother, my great-grandma, became very upset and said that she was going to pray to the shrine they had at home and offer some food to the gods. Later that year, my grandpa's family moved to Tokyo, where he met my grandma, and they eventually relocated to the US. It wasn't until he was older that my grandpa realized what he saw that day and why people in his hometown kept disappearing. He told me that it was because the culturally ambiguous deities they worshipped got used to the offerings and didn't want people to leave the village. The deities they worshipped were not proper gods and had no restraints to act benevolent. Kamikakushi was a way for them to keep the humans there, so their incense would never burn out and their offerings never depleted. The cluster of villages are long gone now, replaced by quaint small towns, New developments where people who stayed there lived a peaceful, rustic life. No one knows what happened to the ones who left back in the days. My grandpa had considered reaching out to someone back home and asking them about the vanished families. He never did. I don't know if he's afraid of what he'll find out, or afraid to hear that those people had vanished too.